tonight following the Shakahola incident that has caused deaths of hundreds of believers. Politicians and religious leaders from Elgeyo Marakwet, Coastal region, and even the Western self-proclaimed Jesus have sobered up. Well, they now want punitive measures against churches, tougher registration standards for churches, and more investigations into Paul Mackenzie. Now, the country is pondering on this and much more. But the question is, could this be the advent of a new religious background checks? Are we on the precipice of the end of religious sideshows that ensnare unsuspecting victims? Or maybe just a knee-jerk reaction to the ongoing saga of 100 people dying? Well, whatever it is, it's going to be an eventful coming weeks in the Kenya, and of course even in the light of what's happening tonight. That's what is trending in the country, and this is just what is coming up tonight. The deadly cult sobers up preachers, politicians, and religious leaders on how now calling for audit of churches and stricter registration of exercises.
I call for regulation of our religious institutions, and I believe the task force or the commission of inquiry that has been.
Now, Kupet is talking. It wants junior secondary school teachers to be paid in full before resumption of school activities. Says teachers have not been paid for months. And university student stabs girlfriend to death after romantic issues, tries to commit suicide himself. And Japan Prime Minister.
Also the curricula of our two countries so that more Kenyans can access skilled and quality jobs in Japan.
Japan Prime Minister Kishiro Fumio is in the country, says Japan will facilitate Kenyans who wish to work in Japan to enable them leap into the Japanese market. And in business news, Kenya Meat Expo is on. Oh ye meat lovers. It's the theme promising resilience in the meat industry through investments. Going cashless, you could now be able to pay with a simple scan of a QR code after the country launches its system in Nairobi. You have this and much more tonight. Of course, we have this and much more tonight. This is the defining face of the news tonight. Well, it's March, and of course, my name is Francis MUSAKALI, and also tonight we go behind Uganda's anti-LGBTQ law, which is in your screen. It has been revised, and of course, Ugandan lawmakers have approved on Tuesday a new version of the country's anti-gay bill that removes a clause that appeared to criminalize acts.
The bill, once the bill is passed into law, it's the duty of the executive to execute it, and we shall do our part as the executive.
Of course, the LGBTQ bill mostly is unchanged. And of course, we'll be going through the behind the scenes and of course, what was discussed in Parliament after the President requested some parts of the bill or the original legislation to be toned down. Our news now starts tonight. Phyllis Mirikwa is telling me that I said March. I said May, Phyllis. Well, we welcome you to interact with us on our social media platforms at Imani Television on Facebook. We are live there as we speak. On YouTube, Imani Television Kenya. And do visit our website for more comprehensive stories on you. Can subscribe to get more Christian content testimonies and hard news straight into your email. That is www.imaniradio.org. Let's begin. Now, our news tonight: the government is committed to addressing the double taxation problem facing projects funded by Japan's Overseas Development Assistance, that is ODA. And the president, that is William Ruto, said the matter is in consideration and that it poses a threat to the future of 10 shillings billion ODA projects in the country. Now, he spoke at State House today during a bilateral meeting with the Prime Minister of Japan, Kishida Fumio. At the same time, Kenyans who wish to work in Japan will now have a chance to tap into the opportunities of the Japanese job market following an agreement between Kenya and Japan. Now, speaking at State House in Nairobi, where he held bilateral talks with Japan Prime Minister, the president stated that the two countries have resolved to align their curriculum to enable Kenyans to access skills and jobs in Japan.
In our deliberations, we agreed to align also the curricula of our two countries so that more Kenyans can access skilled and quality jobs in Japan. We have also agreed on a number of bilateral issues between Kenya and Japan on the exploitation of the geothermal resources in our country. We've also agreed on a couple of other issues on the development of Dongo Kundu, a special economic zone in Mombasa, to expedite the construction and for Japan to support Japanese investors in taking space in the special economic zone. I also undertook that Kenya is going to facilitate investment of Japanese companies and also support Japan to be able to finance Kenya's.
Well, Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki is among 5 CSs who are slated to appear today before the Senate to answer questions. Now, others who appear today are Kipchumba Murkomen for transport, Penina Malonza for tourism, Zakaria Njeru for lands, Ezekiel Machogu for education. And they were the second group of ministry bosses to appear since the inaugural CSS's question in the chamber last week. Now, CS Kindiki, Njeru and Salim Vuria became the first to appear before the senators in the whole house. Now, the Ministry of Tourism might have lost 80 million shillings after a cruise ship was with about 1,000 tourists was supposed to dock in the port of Mombasa and changed its destination due to Azimio's protest. Now, that was Tourism CSS Penina Malonza, who said the ship was scheduled to dock in March but was cancelled due to the opposition's demonstrations. Take a look at the proceedings today.
Very much, Honorable Speaker. Again, I come back on this question. Honorable Speaker, as I had already stated on the loss of the number of visitations in our national parks and our historical sites, Honorable Speaker, allow me to correct that the loss that we gained for this one cruise ship was 80 million. Besides the number of other losses, 80 million shillings, Kenya shillings, if they were to visit. Besides the other, Honorable Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much for according me this opportunity to appear before this august House, Mr. Speaker, and for me it's to come back home, albeit sitting in a very unfamiliar territory in this House, Mr. Speaker. But also very historical. This corner, a lot of decisions were made in this corner, Mr. Speaker, and another room behind here. So still gives me great pleasure to be here. It's very emotional for me to come back home. I thank the Honorable Senator of Tana River, who is also my senior colleague in the profession, Mr. Speaker, for this question. I'll go straight to the answer, which is that, Mr. Speaker, national government has constructed 21,556 kilometers of tarmac roads since independence. Mr. Speaker, the following roads totaling 442 kilometers under Tana River County have over the years.
Information is as follows, that on the 5th of April 2023, the area member of parliament, accompanied with a group, went to Moja Primary School, and there was another rival group, and there was a confrontation that ensued between the group that was with the member of parliament and the group that also emerged from the school community. In the fracas, Honorable Speaker, 3 people were shot at and 3 sustained some injuries. The matter was reported to the Directorate of CID, and the information that we have been able to confirm.
Following the Shakahola incident that has caused death of hundreds of believers, some politicians and religious leaders from Elgeyo Marakwet have called for an appropriate law to be put in place to regulate the registration of churches in the country. Now, a section of leaders from Elgeyo Marakwet County.
I call for regulation of our religious.
Sorry for that. They are calling for an enactment of the laws and amendments for some clauses in the 2010 Constitution to regulate registration of churches in the country. Now they are reacting to the Shakahola message that has seen over 100 people dead. Now the horrific saga has seen President William Ruto now intervene in the Kenya's homegrown religious movements and thrown a spotlight on failed efforts to regulate unscrupulous churches and cults that have dabbed in criminality. Now this week Ruto is expected to set up a task force that will interrogate how to govern religious activities in Kenya, which is home to about 4,000 churches. Now let's listen in.
I call for regulation of our religious institutions, and I believe the task force or the commission of inquiry that has been formed by the president will be able to recommend that there be regulations so that our churches can be able to be controlled. And what we are saying is very simple. One is we need vetting of our churches. The law in Kenya that provides for the registration of churches in Kenya is the Societies Act. But in Kenya, to register a church, what you only need is to drop the constitution of that particular church you intend to register, be at office of the registrar of societies.
Constitution ndio mahali kuna shida, kwa sababu shida watu ambao wameingia ndani, mwenye imefunguliwa, watu wameingia ndani katika wanachificha katika religion and they are criminals. So ningependa tu kusema serikali lazima wapunge wetu waketi chini waone kama we can revisit our constitution.
Wakati alipofikia kusimamisha watoto wasiende shule, we made an intervention. Serikali inajua. We made an intervention. We made a move. Lakini sasa tukishapeleka issue kwa serikali tuondoa mikono. Tunachosema ni kwamba watu kama wamekufa zaidi ya 100 huko, ndio tunajua kuna mtu alizembea mahali fulani kwa watu wahusika nao, na hiyo naongea authoritatively as an individual kwamba kuna mtu mahali fulani either alizembea ama alikula mlungula ndio ikafika hapo. Lakini kama kila kitengo kilikuwa active isingefika hapo. Wale wahubiri wengine wasio ndani ya umbrella bodies zetu tunawaomba waanze kuregister. Masons ambaye hakusoma lakini anajua kujenga anapewa certificate, na tunawahubiri hawakusoma wapewe certificate kwa sababu tumewaprove wana sound doctrine. So na hiyo tuweza sisi, kwa hivyo tuachiwe sisi, serikali ituulize sisi.
Kadiri tujuavyo, Ezekiel hayuko chini ya mwavuli wowote. Ezekiel yuko peke yake, na kama tulivyosema hapa, tunasema tunaomba na kupendekeza kwa dhati kwamba Paul Mackenzie achunguzwe na yeyote mwingine ambaye ana tabia jinsi yake.
Pastor Mackenzie amekuwa akiwadhulumu akina mama huko Shakahola. Chukulia huyu aliyefanya hili jambo kama si mhubiri. Mimi naona ni mtu tu wa kawaida, ama ni shetani, ama ni muhalifu. Yani sijui watu wanawapatia nini, hata wakifika hospitali hawataki kutibiwa, hawataki kukula, na zaidi ya siku 4 nikitembea hapo General.
Now, the Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers in Kenya, KUPPET, wants junior secondary school teachers to be paid all their salaries before schools reopen next week. Now, the union says they have not paid teachers for close to 4 months now, a situation that has led to many teachers going into debt and even having mental health challenges. Now, the union has also asked the government to reconsider its stance to place junior secondary schools back to primary schools, saying that it wasn't wise in the first place. Let's listen in.
A junior secondary school teacher in Kakamega County took his own life out of frustrations, while another from Kisii County is nursing serious bodily injuries inflicted on him by the group of border operators whom he owes debts for transportation accrued over 4 months. It is never too late. We are asking government to reconsider this position, because we are going to lose a generation because of our taking positions which are contrary to what expectations were supposed to have been taken in the placement of junior secondary. The environment.
They require mass for 6 Mbihi High School girls who died in a road accident in Nakuru has been done today in Vihiga County. The students died on 18th of April as they headed home after closing school for the holidays. Now, guests in the mass used the platform to urge drivers to be keen while driving in the roads to preserve life. Let's listen in.
Ya watoto walikuwa na afya njema, walikuwa na hamu ya kuona wazazi wao, walikuwa na hamu ya kuona mipango yao inaendelea na kuendelea maisha yao, lakini mkono wa shetani kupitia accident ulikatiza maisha yao. Naungana na nyinyi kusema pole sana familia, ni uchungu mwingi, lakini Biblia inatuambia Mungu anapeana na pia anatuchukua, na mara mingi hatujui kwa nini anachukua watoto wakiwa wachanga. Yeye mwenyewe anajua. Sisi kama wazazi letu sasa ni kusema tuachilie watoto wetu waende kupumzika na amani pale Mungu amewapangia. Mkumbatie pamoja na board of management, tuwapatie support ili ashikilie shule irudi pale ilikuwa na inawiri zaidi. Mimi najua tena wizara ya elimu mko pia na mpango ya social psycho support. Naomba tena mkue karibu pamoja na kanisa, process zao za support, tusaidie shule endelee vizuri.
More than 100 families from different parts of the Budalangi constituency have been left homeless following heavy rains that have hit the region. Now, this situation has affected or forced residents to move to temporary camps. Now, the areas of Bumacheke, Igigo, Mumbira, and Sibuka have been affected severely. Now, these people are now appealing to the county and the national government to intervene and rescue them from the situation which has brought many children to suffer with diseases, including cholera, and of course lack of food to sustain them. Let's listen.
Niko kwa kambi, nimeathirika na maji. Maji imeingia kila sehemu. Watu hata hakuna mahali pa kuenda. Imebidi tujikinge mahali kwa shule, na hii shule hasa iko karibu kufunguliwa. Hata maji imeingia kwa mimea zetu, chakula. Watoto wakapa wanalia njaa. Hata kwenda tu kutafuta chakula pia ni shida. Chakula hata hakuna, ninaomba msaada. Tunaomba, tumeathirika sana. Na mvua nayo imezidi, hata vile naongea hivi inataka tu kuanza saa hii. Sisi hata tumeingiwa na hofu, tutaenda wapi hata watoto wakifungua shule.
Mimi nika hapa kwa ajili ya mvua. Sasa nimemaliza wiki 2. Mvua ilinyesha nyingi hata ikaingia katika boma langu. Hakuna pahala ambapo naweza kwenda. Sasa nimekuja hapa kwa shule ya Igigo. ndio nimekimbilia nikaapa na watoto wangu. Sasa magonjwa ya malaria ndio hiyo.
Hizi madarasa zote tayari ziko na watu ambao maji yameshawahamisha. Serikali kama inaweza kukumbuka, maana kuna wamama hapa, kuna watoto wachanga, na watu hao wamekaa katika hali ya njaa.
Tuko na changamoto ya mvua. Mvua imetukumba, maji inatokezea kwa milima, inatokezea kwa Ruambwa irrigation scheme. Tuko na wiki moja. Sasa hii wiki moja hii kama wazazi wanajipanga, watoto pia wako karibu kufungua shule, tunaomba tu serikali kazidi kuangalia makazi mahali tunaweza kukaa.
Tiongo. Hizi damu zaidi za kusaidia kuweza kuharvest haya maji, ili maji haya pia tunaweza kutumia pia kwa irrigation.
Wakati tukomo sahi ni wakati ya uchafu, maji yanashikana pamoja na uchafu kwa kinyeshi. Sahi choo zote ziko ndani ya maji, inamaanisha kwamba hata kinyeshi pia kinakaa katika maji. Na hii ni ground moja kuu katika
Uasin Gishu police officers in Eldoret are investigating a gruesome murder of a second-year university student from the University of Eldoret. Now, this student on your screen allegedly committed, or rather, the murder was allegedly committed by her boyfriend. Stacy Chemtai died a few days ago after her lover, Elkanah Korir, stabbed her in the escalation of their romantic issues. Korir committed a heinous, or the heinous act in her house outside the campus precincts. Now, the third-year student also attempted to hurt himself after stabbing his lover, but was rushed to hospital after he was found lying next to her remains. Now, the suspect is currently receiving treatment at a hospital, while the remains of the deceased have been moved to Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital mortuary. Now, the police say the investigations are continuing and they are awaiting for the male student to recover so that he can be questioned as well on his motives.
Msichana anaishingi peke yake, nyumba ni ya msichana. Alitunga msichana kisu, alafu baadaye mwenyewe akajitunga kisu. So kwa hiyo harakati walikuwa wanang'ang'ana kung'oa mlango. Ndio akaamua kimaliza. Kama aliona already hata akitoka watu watammaliza na hiyo hasira.
Kijana aliweza kufungia msichana mwenzake kwa nyumba. Majirani walipomuita kwamba aweze kufungua mlango akakataa. Ikafika wakati sasa akamdunga na kisu, na msichana wetu aliweza kupasi. Bali kijana tuliambiwa ampelekwe hospitali, hatujui sasa kama ako hai ama. Tumetuma kweli watoto wetu kwa shule tuweze kuwatembelea. Sometimes watoto wetu wanakaa.
Unfortunate. Now, with the prevailing floods and soil erosion in Busia County during this ongoing rainy season, members of the Gospel Musician Union have launched a campaign to plant trees in schools and heavily affected areas. Speaking at the launch of the event held at Amoni Primary School, the activists called on the schools across the country to establish environmental conservation clubs to support these efforts. Now, the impact of floods and soil erosion has been devastating in Busia, affecting both residents and their livelihoods. Now, the Gospel Musicians Union recognizes the need for immediate action to mitigate the effects of these environmental disasters. Now, the union, which is also urging schools to and community members to join hands in the efforts to protect the environment by planting trees and promoting sustainable practices, was speaking today. Let's listen.
Mesongosha hapo juu pale.
One indicator ya mazingira kuharibika, kwa sababu kuna miti zenye zinashika udongo, lakini tunakuja tuna harvest tunawacha. Mvua ikinyesha mingi, hiyo udongo ikisok inakuwa.
Now, the county police commander of Trans Nzoia, Nelson Shilungi, has spoken out about the recent attack of county officials during a funeral in Birunda area. According to Shilungi, the incident is being investigated by the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, and he has urged the public to remain calm and patient while the case is being resolved. Now, the attack reportedly occurred during or due to a political disagreement between county officials, which then escalated into violence during the funeral service. Shilungi emphasized the importance of avoiding violence and conflict at all costs, particularly during somber events like funerals. Now, he also issued a stern warning to politicians, urging them to not use funeral gatherings as a platform for inciting violence or engaging in any kinds of disruptive behavior, making it clear that the government will take action against anyone found guilty.
When I just alighted from Eldoret and I was badly beaten, I was badly assaulted. On Saturday, I had received the intel that they wanted to beat us at the funeral, which was at Nabiso Ward. First, I want to condemn the act. The act was barbaric, the act was unholy, and the act should be condemned, used the strongest word possible ever used in any dictionary in this world.
Who did this heinous act are quite at large, and they have continued to do the same. They have assaulted other people. And we even have one person here, we have one of our staff here who has been assaulted yesterday, it was assaulted yesterday by the same criminals being funded by that local politician. Personally, I had not declared any interest in the community seat of parliament. I'm a worker, I'm a staff in the office of the governor to help the governor deliver his manifesto.
Vijana wachaneni na hii mambo ya kutumwa. Hiyo ni makosa sana. Kaunti hii tunataka tufanye kazi. Na sasa mkianza kutumiwa kutishia watu wenye wafanyikazi wa serikali penye watasimama ili hali wanatakana wawafikie mashinani, itakuwa ni ngumu sana kuwafikia na kesho mtalia governor hajafanya kazi.
Well, these are just some of the stories our newsroom here is working hard to bring to you at this time to consume as at now. And of course, let's run down the whole news that are making headlines tonight. The deadly cat has sobered up preachers and politicians and religious leaders alike, and they are calling for an audit of churches and stricter registration exercises.
I call for regulation of our religious institutions, and I believe the task force or the commission of inquiry that has been.
And Kupet is talking now. It wants JSS teachers, unit secondary school teachers, to be paid in full before resumption of school activities. It says these teachers have not been paid for 4 months. And university students stab student to death after romantic issues, tries to commit suicide himself.
Also, the curricula of our two countries so that more Kenyans can access skilled and quality jobs in Japan.
Japan Prime Minister Kishiro Fumio is in the country, says Japan will facilitate Kenyans who wish to work in Japan to enable them leap into the Japanese market. And in business news that is just coming up, the Kenya Meat Expo is on and all ye meat lovers are excited. Its theme is promoting resilience in the meat industry through investment. We are going cashless as a country. Now we'll be able to pay from simple scan of the QR code in supermarkets and everywhere after the country launches its system in Nairobi. Kenyans let's take a look at some business news. Kenyans will soon be able to pay for goods and services at shops and supermarkets by simply scanning a QR code. Now, these are the images using their mobile devices, of course. This is after the Central Bank of Kenya, CBK, today launched the Kenya Quick Response Code, that is Standard 2023, alongside various players in the telecom and banking industries. Now, merchants will have a QR code containing the information such as business name and amount due, and customers will scan it from the provider's apps, including the M-Pesa, Equity, and KCB mobile banking apps, in order to pay. Now, the customers will then confirm the merchant details and initiate the payment by entering their PIN, similar to money transfers and withdrawals. Now, the customers will be notified by SMS or in the app once the payment is complete, and they will be able to download the receipt afterwards. And of course, the product marks a step in the cashless payment in Kenya for customers who previously had to manually input different payment codes and numbers. QR payments also does away with errors common with digital payments in cases where customer misspells a merchant's payment code. And of course, CBK says the standard is based on the globally accepted EMVCO QR code specification, and it will be rolled out in phases. Now, Kenya now joins the Philippines, India, and China, and South Africa, among others, who have implemented the standardized approach to go or to opt for a QR code payment. Now, this move is aimed at making seamless payment systems active in Kenya. The launch was attended by the CBK Governor Patrick Njoroge and CEO Safaricom Peter Ndegwa. Let's listen in.
Because guiding the Kenyan future Absa Cooperative Bank equity is all about Bank of Kenya. Let's move you to the center of the stage so that we can take a nice photo. Congratulations to you, Peter, that will guide the entire process. Ladies and gentlemen, we're witnessing another moment in history of digital innovation. Once again,
the QR code standard that we are launching is the outcome of a collaborative process that brought together the retail payments industries, including banks, payment service providers, our development partners, and the central bank. To me, this is a milestone in more than one respect. In particular, it's a milestone because of the collaboration that has taken place. Indeed, as the national payment strategy envisages, this milestone would not have been possible without collaboration.
Now, the Kenya Meat Expo 2023 is taking place, and it started from May 3rd to 5th May, and of course it's happening at Kenya International Convention Center, Nairobi, under the theme Promoting Resilience in the Meat Industry Through Investment and Innovation for Job Creation and Economic Growth. It's a long theme. These are the images. Now, this year's edition offers a learning and networking experience of its kind among stakeholders in the livestock sector. Now, it's geared towards providing ample opportunities for exhibitors to showcase the latest in the meat industry, including the products and services and technologies retailers need to grow their businesses. Now, the participants will gain tools, insights, inspiration, and new ideas to differentiate unique products and services, reinforce marketing returns on investments, and increase sales and build customer loyalty. The expo will bring positive changes in the sector through better industry cooperation or coordination, creation of jobs, wealth creation, consumer awareness, and increase in profitability, as well as ensuring a larger contribution of the sector to Kenya's GDP. Of course, I would want to attend so that I take part in the feasting of the meat, like they were shown in the screen there. The nyama choma is one of my delicacies. Well, that's just it for news now tonight, but we'll never like to close our broadcast without giving you an in-depth report of what's happening across our continent, this time in Uganda. Now, you remember that Uganda some time back passed a law. There was anti-LGBTQ law, as many described it. Now, the president brought it back to the House to make some revisions because people were saying, look, it's draconian. So some revisions were made and it went back. But as you will see in this story, not much has changed. Ugandan lawmakers have approved on Tuesday, that is yesterday, a new version of the country's anti-gay bill that removes a clause that appeared to criminalize acts identified as LGBTQ. These are the images. Though still, as it still does one of the world's strictest anti-LGBTQ bills, mostly unchanged, including provision for land, jail terms, and the death penalty after the president requested some parts of the original legislation to be torn down. Now, these were deliberations on your screen.
Once the bill is passed into law, it's the duty of the executive to execute it, and we shall do our part as the executive.
And of course, let's run that again, Dennis. Now, of course, these were the deliberations. Of course, the Parliament was deliberating yesterday on Tuesday, and it passed the bill. Of course, they have been described as draconian. Of course, the rest of the world is talking about the Ugandan bill.
Thank you very much. The bill, once the bill is passed into law, it's the duty of the executive to execute it, and we shall do our part as the executive.
The provisions retained in the new bill allow for the death penalty in cases of the so-called aggravated homosexuality. Now, that term is used by the government to describe actions including having gay sex when HIV positive or when one of the partners is HIV positive.
Intimidation out there. You know, people being promised to be denied visas, travel restrictions and bans. But we've been able to withstand that.
And I want to thank all them.
Now, Museveni, a vocal opponent of the LGBTQ rights, has signaled that he intends to sign the legislation once certain changes are made, including the addition of measures to rehabilitate gay people.
I challenged the people I met, especially Africans, that we can see their struggle to defend the right to sexual orientation. And I don't see them defend the right of Africa in, say, transfer of technology like the Chinese are doing. The black race is struggling to transfer homosexuality, not technology, to Africa.
It is not immediately clear if the new bill has satisfied Museveni's request, and his office was not available for comment. Now, the legislation was amended to stipulate that merely identifying as LGBTQ is not a crime. It also revised a measure that obligated people to report homosexuality activity to not only require reporting when a child is involved. Now, of course, we are also addressing and assessing the global impact that will have a ripple effect on Uganda as is concerned with this law. But after a voice vote on Tuesday that followed less than half of the debate, Parliament Speaker Anita Among urged lawmakers to remain defiant in the face of international criticisms. On your screens, Western governments suspended aid, imposed visa restrictions, and curtailed security cooperation in response to another anti-LGBTQ law Museveni signed in 2014. Now, that law was nullified within months by a domestic court on procedural grounds. The US government says last week that it's assessing the implications of the looming law for activities in Uganda under its flagship HIV and AIDS program. We shall be bringing you that story, of course, much more in detail tomorrow night as well. And of course, this has been your news tonight. I'll see you tomorrow night. This is Francis Musakali. Phyllis Mirikwa happens to be our sign language interpreter tonight. I'll see you then. Bye.
Kituo hiki cha Imani Radio na Imani TV kimeteuliwa kama station bora ya utangazaji katika tuzo la kuza mwaka huu na mamlaka ya mawasiliano nchini. Kwa hivyo tufanye tuwe washindi kwa kutupigia kura. Chukua simu yako, andika neno kuza kwa herufi kubwa na utume kwa nambari 15601 15601. Utachagua lugha na ujibu maswali manne. Andika Imani Radio kama station ya redio ya eneo lako unayoipenda na Imani TV kama station ya TV unayoipenda. Andika Star Times kama huduma ya TV ya kulipia unayoipenda. Kumbuka, kwa kutumia huduma hii hautozwi chochote. Kwa hivyo ambia rafiki atupigie kura. Andika neno kuza na utume kwa nambari 15601 Tufanye tuwe washindi. Imani Radio na TV, tunajenga imani yako ndani yake Yesu Kristo.